We live in a fantasy world now. Reality has been destroyed.
This is the time that we really need to pay attention.
The probabilities are overwhelmingly on gold's side. That is the best environment to see gold increase its value.
Welcome to Palisade's Gold Radio. I'm your host, Tom Bodrovics. Joining me today is Dr. Ron Paul, former congressman from Texas and host of the Liberty Report. Dr. Paul, thanks so very much for joining me today. How are you?
Tom, nice to be with you.
So, Dr. Paul, I want to start by getting your take on what the link between liberty and the economy is. If we get an economic crash, why do you think we can recover faster with more liberty?
We have a little bit of evidence for this, and I think 1921 is a good example because that was before Keynesian economic policy became, the status quo coming out of the universities. That you had hands off. They were still messing up the interest rates, and then in the 20s, the Fed was there causing a bubble. There was a bubble in the stock market, and then there was an adjustment. But they didn't do anything for a whole year, and the GDP went down sharply. And by then, the people just didn't expect it. The governments weren't supposed to do that. And I think it lasted more than a year, but it was very, very bad. But the recovery was better. But now, ever since that time, and then when the big depression started in the late 20s and early 30s, we have to do something. We have to do something because the universities were teaching all the professors and all the politicians, you just can't let it go, and we have to help. Of course, that's when they introduced intervention to get rid of the depressions and recessions and try to, we have to do a better job at manipulating things. So that was a big shift. But there's just common sense. Societies, the freer a society is, the more prosperous a society is. And we still have, a fair amount of prosperity, and there's still, remnants of what a marketplace is like. But, and there's another relationship that is very well known in economic history, and that is with a sound monetary policy, where you have a unit of account you can define. This is going to be much healthier. And I think the real culprit there is the rigging and the messing around and the pretending that they can smooth out the economy with giving the Fed this power to manipulate interest rates. And every single day, including today, they're talking about what are we going to do tomorrow? And we have to know what the interest rate. They don't know. And somebody said, well, what we need to do is put you ahead. I said, I don't know. Nobody knows. So that's the problem. But they pretend they know, and they just want to change, the authoritarians and say, well, I can do it better. But the whole gimmick is they have that terrible system that hurts the people, designed to help the very special interest groups, the military industrial complex, and the others who live off the government.
Mm-hmm. Well, directly in that vein, Dr. Paul, right around the election, Elon Musk expressed interest in having you join the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, in Trump's second term. So he saw you as a key figure in reducing the federal budget. So what are some of the key areas, do you think, that you would focus on to help reduce government waste?
Well, there's nothing official about that. There may be, but I'm not anxious for that. But I'm pleased that they're at least listening to our side of the argument, and they do respond. And even today, there was a response on what we're doing. One of the things that got the best attention was symbolically, I can understand it, and that was when we started saying, get rid of all foreign aid. And the people, even though that's not the most gigantic item in the budget, but the people responded to that. We got a lot of support, from Musk and the whole crowd there. And the people, we had millions of hits on that, because I think people can see that and feel it and see how stupid it is. But there are some other ones. So we still participate, but it's sort of an unofficial thing. It's not like I have a title. It's not like I'm on a payroll, but I'm very pleased, because if they at least talk or repeat what I say, that we're doing what I've tried to do for 30 years, is get a message out about free markets.
Mm-hmm. Of course, you're also very famous for wanting to end the Fed, Dr. Paul. What steps do you think would need to be taken in order to do this? Would it be a complicated process?
Well, I guess start by repealing the Federal Reserve Act, which gave it the authority, and then enforce the Constitution. Have a case and set up and say, look, this is illegal, and then win that. But in the meantime, it's very tough because the best way I can understand what's going on is I have a medical analogy is when somebody's totally addicted to smoking, drinking, or drugs, and you say, well, get off him here, I'm taking away. They don't go, it's not smooth sailing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an addiction. And so it always requires, and in the past, maybe 1921, they say, sweat it out and start all over again. But not now. They don't want to do it. They keep feeding them the drug, and the drug is easy money, easy credit, low interest rates, and then try to cover the bases. Every place there's a defect, well, we'll have a regulation to help the people. Oh, it's hurting this group, hurting the farmers. Well, we got to take care of them, and on and on. You have to repeal. You have to repeal that whole notion in order to get to someplace. The gradualism, I don't think it's going to work, but even though I'm working with people who believe it does, for years they talked about waste, fraud, and abuse, and we'd have votes in the Congress, and I'd always vote for them, but I never believed they were going to do much good. Waste, fraud, and abuse, that's government. They're wasteful and fraudulent and abusive. So, but it's still, I think the effort now and the determination with the new administration and with the people, they're sick and tired of it. But I work hard to try to get them to understand. One annoying thing I have found over the years is when the prices start to go up, that's inflation. Well, it is. It's inflation of prices, but they think that's it. Inflation is inflation. Oh, it's the business people. They're gouging people. We have to write rules against gouging. Oh, labor unions demanding too much wages. We have to deal with that. And they go on, and they try to solve it with regulation. And they have to realize that when they go to the store and the prices go up for groceries and a loaf of bread goes from $1 to $5, that's a tax. It's an inflation tax because it's stealing money. It's stealing the value without the IRS knocking on your door. They take your money. They can take 10, 20, 30% of the money away from you. So that is a tax. And if people would only say, boy, I just went to the grocery store. I used to be able to get this bag of grocery for $10. Now it's $30. And if somebody would say to them, well, that's a tax. That's coming from the government, because what they did, they didn't raise the prices. They took away the value of your dollar. Your dollar's worth less. And, more and more people do understand that, but not enough. The average housewife has to do that. The average person became aware of the government interference in COVID, and finally they rebelled and helped, squelch a lot of that nonsense that was going on. So the same way with if the people realize that it's a tax and it has to do with spending. But no, they would come to my office and say, we have this problem. What do you think we should do? Send me more money. No, I don't think it's going to work. Send me more money so the value of the dollar goes down. So it's a misinformation, but it's all deliberate, because the saints out there to tell us what we're supposed to believe, they all get a job at the Federal Reserve.
Do you think a great first step would be to audit the Fed?
I think that'd be a pretty good idea. So, yeah. I had a criticism made to me by another libertarian. He said, well, I'm not so sure you'll do it because you want to just audit the Fed. I said, no, I have a bill in to abolish the Fed. But he just wanted to find fault. He said, no, you talk too much about auditing the Fed. But it is a step that you could take, because maybe we would find out a lot of what's happening. The part that they keep most secret is the activity on international markets, because you can't get to those markets. And when there have been quite a few in the last 50, 60 years. It's usually international. Certain of our allies have problems. I think there's a transfer of many, many dollars and a lot of credit that is totally hidden. And it does help some people. There's no doubt about it. A counterfeiter, they do pretty well for a while until they get caught, and I think when you see these problems, I look at it, they're getting caught. People are waking up and knowing about it. And I would say that since I was first elected to Congress in '76, it fascinated me. It was a monetary issue. But I would say that I had more people in the '70s and '80s look at me like, what in the world are you talking about? Why are you worried about that? And now a lot less of that. A lot of, tomorrow, there'll be another Fed meeting, but there'll be a lot of agitation, a lot of anticipation, a lot of speculation where people are gambling and saying, oh, it won't work. It'll do this. Gold's going up, gold's going down. And, you eliminate. Just think if you didn't have future markets and currencies, you didn't have that before 1971, but now it's all over the place. So, I think the one thing is that we do know is that the liquidation has to come. You have to liquidate the debt. You can't take care of the 36 trillion by making it 76 trillion. That won't work. So the liquidation of debt. But not many people talk about the malinvestment. People make dumb mistakes. And when interest rates are, 2 or 3 or 4% now, but it's amazing. Under the pressure of the system, consumers now still sucked in, and they go out and borrow money at 20%. The credit cards. So it's a bad system, and that's why I think if you want to talk about getting rid of the Fed, why don't we just say, go to the Constitution, tells us what legal tender ought to be. But what happened, really up until 1971, it was never perfect, but there was a definition of the unit of account. It was based on silver and gold, and we knew gold was 20, 35, 800, 2,000, and there is no reliable unit of account. So you need to do that. And the Fed, instead of protecting that, they protect the people who are making money off it. And guess what? Who gets taxed? It's the guy that can't protect themselves. And that is the people who go and pay these extra things. They didn't get the protection. And they say, well, I'm out of money. The only thing I can ask for is the government to send me more money.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Paul, as you're mentioning the liquidation of the debt, I recently had Dr. Judy Shelton on the show, and she, mentioned this idea of issuing gold-backed bonds. Do you think this would be a reasonable idea in order to curb some of the spending and impose some fiscal restraint?
Yeah, I do. I think that would be reasonable. I'm not so sure how well it would work, because they probably would start with a long bond, and because they could say, a 90-day treasury bill is going to be backed by gold. It could be done, because that's essentially what it's like if you do have a gold standard. Mm-hmm. But I think that having a gold-backed bond would be a good economic education, because if you can buy the bond at 2 or 3% for 10 years, maybe somebody would buy those kind of bonds when they're saving for their kids' education. Because now, they have gimmicks at banks to try to protect and pay for the education up front or in advance. But no, I think that would be good. It would be good if the people did their savings, and if you had a gold-backed bond, at the rate it's moving now. It would be probably a pretty good deal for them. They might get an increase faster than what the tuition is going up. But anyway, no, I think it's a good idea, but it's not a final answer. If it worked real well, then you say, well, let's do it for everybody.
Mm-hmm. In your view, are the tariffs that Trump is speaking about implementing the correct path forward?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
In your view, are the tariffs that Trump is speaking about implementing the correct path forward?
I thought you said terrorists, so I think maybe they are terrorists who want to do this. No, I think tariffs are terrible. I think it's a tax. And this whole thing that you can get enough money that you don't have it to have an income tax, or we'll pay off our debt. Because if we sell our gold and put all that money in crypto is going to go up so high we can pay off the debt in a minute, and everything will be all right. No, I think it's a really a tough job to figure all that out. But some of the principles are very simple in a way, and I think the founders understood this. Jefferson at least did.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Paul, another pillar that needs to be addressed in America is the regulations on businesses, both small and large. So, what are some of the regulations that you see as needing to be cut in order to benefit Americans to bring business back onshore?
Well, first, get the federal government out of the business. The federal government they deal with all the problems that the monetary system creates and inequities. So they want to solve that problem. So they create regulations, and then which is illegal. I mean, they don't have a right to write law, and Congress says nothing. They just let them do it, and the regulations, and then the bureaucrats go in and try to do this, and they can't do it. It's very expensive. It's very ineffective, and you wouldn't have that. So you should get rid of all those agencies and enforce the Constitution and said agencies can't write law. Even the courts shouldn't be able to write laws, and they do too much of that, especially in the recent years. It's all political stunt on what they do, and what they do with the Department of Justice is a farce. And so the courts ought to be limited to what they're supposed to be doing, as well as the executive branch shouldn't be able to do that. Tariffs, though, I think are just another tax, and it's not going to get rid of your income tax. But I think inevitably some companies may benefit at the beginning, but eventually there'll be retaliation, because I think you already hear whispers about retaliations, and Trump isn't even president yet. So what are they going to do? And there's a lot of people optimistic, but I think this is one thing that has changed over my lifetime. And I wasn't so much involved 20, 30 years ago, but it was sad. I heard people talk about it, that tariffs were bad, and both the Democrats and Republicans might have taken that position. But now it's super. They want something. Anybody will tell them this will help take care of the big deficit, and this whole thing about sell gold and buy crypto. This will take care of the deficit, and we won't even have to have an income tax, because once crypto is $10 million, everybody is going to be rich. So it's a game they play. And I think that the Constitution, if it gets confusing for people, the truth is I talked to a lot of college kids, and I said, well, if you try to figure it out, just start by reading the Constitution, because it's pretty good. If you look at the 10 Amendments and look at 9th and 10th, government's not supposed to be doing this. And I have high trust. I think the economics of free choices, voluntarism, is so superior to anything else. It's amazing to me that our side of this argument, we do so poorly. I mean, we have some victories, but why should they continue to do this thing and tell them these stories? But if you look throughout history, the freer a country is, the wealthier it is, and I wish we could make it the more peaceful it is. But unfortunately, we're in the business of managing an empire and a world currency, and we're doing this through military force, and that's going to come to an end. There's no doubt in my mind. I consider, defense is one thing, but managing an empire is something else, and empires come to an end, and the currencies come to an end too. They will end, and something will replace it. They're trying to figure out what it will be. And I would let the market determine that. That's why in office I introduce bills, just free it up. If somebody wants to use something, even the gold and silver, which should be legal tender or could be, people have been taxed, but we're sort of making inroads to that. And that is there's capital gains taxes if you own gold, and there's sales taxes if you go in and buy coins. But that is starting to shift. There's been education. This is one thing that's wonderful about the Constitution. Some of these things that are the rights, the obligation are directly given to the states to do it. And I think it's and that idea has also been beneficial with all this nonsense of this radical liberal crazy stuff that people are moving. Have you heard that people move away from California? I can't believe it. They move out of New York to where do they go? They're coming to Texas and Florida. Not perfect, but it must be a little bit better. So the founders made sure that free travel was part of the implication that the states could do that. And then there's a way of ironing that out. They'll figure. Let's say in 5 years from now, let's say, why is it that the big crash came, and why did Florida survive, and why did Texas survive? And look at California. They're all living in the gutter. You thought it was bad. You thought it was bad during COVID and other things where people were living on the street, but the whole state is a mess. So there's stuff in the Constitution that can help us solve it, but I don't even look at those details. Freedom works, and liberty is vital. Choices by individuals. That's why it's so important that just think if you had voluntarism, everything that we did, you would have a libertarian country. You would have you buy and then sell. If you agree to sell to me and I buy, that's it. Mm-hmm. If not, you separate. You don't do it. Everything is voluntary. But what about in social things? What about religious things, sexual things? Everything is voluntary. But if there's force and abuse of vulnerable children or something like that, that doesn't have to be part of it. But it is. The social things would be better. But what if we applied that of voluntarism with international affairs? What about how many countries are we in? We have military in 120 countries. What if we had this crazy idea that we're not going to put any troops in any country unless we have a precise reason? Of course, there wouldn't be any, and our troops would come home, and we could save billions and billions of dollars, and our defense and security would be enhanced. And the economy would be better under those conditions. So voluntarism is a great idea. I'm sure glad I invented that.
Do you see a big challenge to this administration of getting accurate information regarding any of the big challenges we faced? As an example, getting accurate information even on Ukraine.
Not from the government. I mean, the government is there to defend themselves, and they will. That's why audits don't work. That's why we don't. A big item. I imagine you would agree that there's something going on with the Fed, that a lot of corruption and evil things. But you can't there. And I was there all those years on a banking committee. I couldn't find out what we're doing. What about the Pentagon? That's the empire. That's the military-industrial complex. They run things. They dictate the budget and everything else. Even with this, desire to cut back, this last budget, just what we're, working with now is ghastly. So it's something that we have to deal with. But I think that there are. I want to be an optimist. I think people are waking up. I think we're better off than when people knew a lot less about it. But you cannot depend on the government to level with you. Matter of fact, I want to know what they're saying, what they're doing, because I'll tell you one little story. Well, my staff said their job was easier than the staffs on other members because their job was to find out, if this bill was unconstitutional. And they said all we had to do was read the title, and the title was very, very positive. It sounded wonderful. And I said, well, they're all lying to you. So they immediately knew what the bill was like. And that's why I never voted for a budget, because they're always lying to you. And it's always done for humanitarian reasons, national security interests, strong military. And if you don't do it, you're unpatriotic. And when I ran for president, that was said of me. And yet I lived with that, because I found out, somebody said one day, they said, do you know what? You take a lot of grief from that, but don't you know you get more money from the military people than these other clowns?
Dr. Paul, I know we're coming up against time here. Is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners to think about or to consider before we wrap up?
Well, I would say, and as I would conclude a lot of my speeches with many young people who would sort of have a light bulb go on. And I think that most people have that. And when they do, they would frequently come to me or call me or write me, what should I do? What should I do? And I sort of become a little bit flippant. I'll say, do whatever you want to do, but do something. But if you believe what the general principle is, if you think they're as wonderful as I do, and there's so many benefits, you ought to spread the message. And I claim, and people could challenge me on this, I believe that if you come to this conclusion and you have a firm grasp of it and you feel confident that it is a right reason, it's not part of the nihilism who says you can't know truth. If that is the case, I think people should have an obligation. A good businessman can do it in his business. Other people could do it other ways. Other people might be able to make money easily, but they always ought to contribute. And I think one of the important things, one thing that I've tried to do is educate in the area of especially history and economics. And so I have a homeschooling curriculum that I've been told that it's not well known about, but a lot of people go through it. And they claim that might be one of the most important things that I've done, is introduce that to the children and get them out of that government system. You don't want the government running your schools. You don't want the government running healthcare. And most people should have come to that conclusion when they look at the havoc that was created with COVID.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Paul, I want to thank you very much for your time today. Of course, for anybody that wants to check out more of Dr. Paul's work, all available at the Ron Paul Liberty Report on Rumble, ronpaulinstitute.org, and of course on Twitter at Ron Paul. Dr. Paul, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Great to be with you today.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. Nothing on this podcast should be taken as investment advice. Guests on this show are not compensated for their appearance. Listeners are urged to educate themselves and make their own decisions. Do not base any investment decisions on the information contained. To view our full disclaimer, please visit our website.